What happens when an entire classroom full of kids, save one, disappear? Well, it's an interesting concept for a movie. I'll give him that. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Rick Cast Reviews. I'm Rick. These are my reviews. It's a very simple name for a channel. Give me a break. Let's get into tonight's review of the film Weapons, or it could be the daytime, depending on whenever you're watching this review. So, this movie Weapons is actually had a lot of buzz rolling behind it since the trailers dropped, and a lot of people are anticipating this film going into this opening weekend. It is directed by Zach Krieger, who did another movie called Barbarian. It was an indie horror film that blew up pretty big. And this is his second outing that he is writing and directing. I will give you the synopsis right here. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at the exact same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. Now, if you look at the trailers, this movie is marketed as a straight horror film, or it emphasizes the horror aspects. And I'm here to tell you, that's not the case. It is not a straight horror movie. It is more of a thriller and a suspense type of film. So you might want to know that going in, whether you like that or not. It's not how it presents it to be. That's not the film's fault. That's the marketing team. Does it take away from the enjoyment of the film? No. If you're a fan of these types of films, it still has its frightening moments, and there's a lot of tension built up within the film. But I just want to get that out of the way, that it is not a straight horror film. My second caveat that I'm going to give you is I'm not a horror fan in particular. Just to give you my taste in horror films, one of my favorite horror films of all time is a movie called Darkness Falls. If you know the film Darkness Falls and how much of an utter piece of trash it is, that may color your perception of my review. But with all those things out of the way, here is my Catholic conservative review of the film Weapons, directed by Zach Krieger, starring Julia Garner, the Silver Surfette herself, Josh Brolin, Thanos, and Alden Ehrenreich, who was in that solo movie that nobody watched, so you might not know who I'm talking about. Either way, let's roll that beautiful B footage and get on with the review. So, the film Weapons opens up in this tiny Pennsylvania town, and as stated in the synopsis, one morning, teacher walks in, Julia Garner, and her class, all but one child, they're all gone. They're all gone. And we start from there, which is nice. There's no setup. There's not a lot of anything. There's the voiceover. We don't know who the voiceover is, but that's neither here nor there. We get into it, boom, right away. I will say that this film has an interesting storytelling dynamic, which is the same time frame of events. It could be a day, a couple days, but they're told from 4 different perspectives. Chapters, if you will. If you're a fan of that type of storytelling where the same events are retold in different perspectives, you're going to love this film. Some people may not like that, but that's a warning going in. There's the same events shown from different perspectives and different characters going through it. So that's something to get into. Now we're going to go 3 up and 3 down on this film, because despite any ratings, even if a film is bad or indifferent, for me, I always try to find good points of a film, because there's always a good idea for a film, even in a bad film. Am I saying this film is bad? No, I'm just telling you, even as a Catholic conservative, I can find value in this. My first one is human depth and moral complexity. So Weapons presents deeply flawed yet relatable characters. Mrs. Grady, Julia Garner, which, by the way, a nice flawed female lead. Doesn't mean she's bad, but she's flawed. She's not perfect, which is nice. Is a caring yet troubled teacher. She has a past that she has to deal with. Archer, who is Josh Brolin, is a grief-stricken father driven by love. And Officer Paul, who's Alden Ehrenreich, sorry, I can't say his name, embodies a man wrestling with duty and moral integrity. These portrayals offer a canvas for reflection on human fallibility and the need for grace and forgiveness, and what drives them throughout the plot. Despite their flaws, there are redeeming values. Like with all of us, there are good things and bad things. It's not black and white. Despite mistakes you may make, there are redeeming qualities to it. Josh Brolin's character, he's a father, the love and the desperation he has to try and get his child back. Julia Gardner as the teacher, trying to redeem the fact that she lost these students and trying to get them back as her responsibility to make up for some of the other troubles that she had. And Aiden Alden Enric. I'm gonna just mess up that name the rest of this time. So forgive me, Alden. The idea of just trying to wrestle, doing the job that he's supposed to do, and other things that he has to wrestle with. So the idea that there is moral complexity, it's good. It's really good in that way. The characters are actually very well written. I will give them that. I think that's very, in horror movies, they can either be really well written or they can be absolutely god awful one note. They're not god awful one note here. There's also the child actor who I want to give a quick shout out since we're talking about these. Carrie Christopher. Carrie Christopher plays Alex in the film. Child actors are hit and miss. They're either really good, Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense, or they're really bad, most other child actors. This kid nails it. In fact, I would actually go out to say that his performance is probably the best performance in the entire film, bar none. And if you see this film, which if you're a Catholic or even a conservative who doesn't like certain things, we'll get to in the negatives, you may not want to be watching this, but the performances of this moral complexity, positive on that, very good. Second, moral warnings against occult temptations. The film's supernatural element, and there is a supernatural element when an entire classroom of kids disappears, which is embodied by a certain character, and what they do serves as an unmistakable cautionary tale. It vividly illustrates how dabbing in practices can corrupt and destroy, and how we should, as people, men and women of goodwill, avoid the temptations to get into these practices at all time. And as a Catholic, this reinforces Catholic teachings that true power only lies within God. So we have that moral warning against the temptations of the occult and other type of things. And then third, there's an engaging narrative here that invites deeper reflection. Shifting perspectives and slow revealing structure, Weapons compels the viewer to look beyond the surface horror elements, which they do exist. There are jump scares, there are things that are there, to a broader sociological and spiritual themes. Communal responsibility, the dangers of suspicion, and our collective vulnerability. And in the end, we're all human in that regard. Multi-layered storytelling invites contemplation on this, especially if you're a person of faith. People of faith who watch horror movies, we always have that conundrum of deeper reflection upon those types of things, and the wrestling with the fact that these elements exist, that the supernatural plane does exist, and that there are elements of evil and of good there. But horror movies, especially these spiritual, supernatural horror films, really bring us face to face with that. So that's a very interesting point there. As I read from my notes, that's why it seems a little jumpy here, back and forth. But those are the positives. There are positives. The performances are really good, and the characters are very good. I'm not going to lie. They are really well written. There are the warnings that you will get against supernatural temptations and occult practices, and then deeper reflection upon that and the face-to-face reality of dealing with supernatural elements, the existence of a supernatural plane, and how we, as people of faith, Catholics, how we approach this supernatural realm. So these are interesting concepts that we have to take a look at. So 3 negatives, 3 concerns that I have. Depiction of occult rituals. If you are not grounded in faith, then there's a temptation to it. And it is treated, the occult practices are treated negatively within the story. The film does give it significant screen time to lure to rituals, which I don't want to get into for spoilers. which could be unsettling for people who are sensitive to those types of things. Even people of faith who watch these, it's unsettling the more you watch it, because you know in your heart and in your soul that this is just not something really good to look at. From my perspective, the depictions or just celebrations of these practices always require caution, because it invites further contemplation, and it could potentially lead to even the acceptance of such things instead of outright saying no to them. The second point is there's an emotional coldness and a narrative distance. The segment structure, the chapter settings, it's a nice way to change up storytelling elements instead of the linear storytelling from point A to point B. But it can leave you disconnected. Now, I will say this is probably one of the effects that the director wants, but it is something you may encounter. As other critics have noted, that it's really emotionally cold. Moving from one perspective to the next, you can't latch on to a specific character, which we like to have as viewers. We like to have our POV, the person that we can associate with, your quote unquote, your good guy. There's one character in particular that I latched onto that I really wish the entire film was pushed from their perspective. And it was actually kind of sad to see how this character was kind of, in some ways, given the short changing, when they could have carried the entire film. I don't want to spoil that in that regard, but that it does, if we don't have that character to latch onto, we can kind of feel adrift through all of these things. Once again, I'm going to say the director may want that, but it's something you may feel, and I feel that can be a negative in that regard, for the storytelling experience. And then, of course, I'm going to have to say, you can label me a Puritan or whatever the case, right? The R-rated content, you can tell that this movie could have done without a lot of the R-rated content. Now, I don't mind the violence. I know it seems like that. There's some wickedly violent stuff here. So if you're sensitive to that kind of those things, there's one scene in particular that even I went, yeesh, when I'm watching this thing, going, that's pretty visual in that regard. So the films it's got epic, explicit violence, psychological horror, morally complex romance subplot, which includes a completely unneeded sexual scene, a sex scene, for lack of a better term. I say it's unnecessary because the way that this film is shot and the amount of clever uses of storytelling narratives, it just feels lazy. It honestly just feels lazy that they just like, oh, look, here is a 10-15 second scene of them having sex. It's like, okay, that's not needed because you can show it in a different way and still have the same impact. So I find it lazy. And of course, there's that graphic sexual encounter with two characters. And it's in the context, if you see the film, you'll see why there's another layer on top of it that's not great. Plus, when you're dealing with the cult imagery, there's a lot of Catholics and a lot of Christians that find it disturbing that it's being shown, and it's even being shown in a positive light. Even if it's being cast in a negative way, it's still positive promotion of it. Now, we talked about, obviously, in the pros, that the supernatural world exists, but the idea of giving it too much screen time is something that needs to be examined as well. Once again, light me up in the comments if you want to. That's fine. Just keep it a little bit respect. Like, try not to get my channel banned. But you can go at me and tell me why you disagree with me in the comment section down below. So let me go over this again, summarize it, the positives and the negatives. The 3 up: deep human characters, well written, and they actually have a nice arc within them, within the story itself. Strong moral narrative on the dangers of occult practices, and the tension and mystery inviting the reflection upon these practices and the recognition of a spiritual world that truly does exist. Negatives: graphic content that centers and glorifies the occult, emotional detachment due to the storytelling. You may find that a positive. I feel it's a negative, but you may think it's a positive. And of course, the graphic nature of some things, like the sexual encounter. Some of you may find the violence completely abhorrent. I get it on that regard as well. And the general things that I feel like they have to put into a horror movie. It feels like, oh, well, you have to have a horror movie. You have to have these things in it, which I don't believe you have to, but it feels like in order to get the film made, they have to get these check marks done. So, my final thoughts. Now, Weapons is a powerful, unsettling film that is steeped in horror elements, but also has thriller and suspense elements in there as well that echoes a deeper spiritual truth, most notably the perils of staying from God's light and the profound need for grace, especially in times of trauma. All the characters that are going through this film, they're going through trauma. And for Catholics, that's when we need to cling to God even more. The film doesn't glorify sin, but its dark material and its emotional distance mean it may be better suited for adult audiences equipped with a strong understanding of faith. Now, obviously, you're going to be like, I don't have any faith and I can watch a movie. Obviously, you can. But I feel that, especially with some of the darker themes, that people who have a strong moral compass and a strong faith compass are better equipped to deal with it. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Good, bad, or indifferent? This is a tough one for me because I'm not a big horror fan, so I don't go back to a lot of horror movies. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give the film an indifferent because I'm not going to really go back to it. It's not so impactful that it's not so good that I'd have to recognize it and go back to it. It's not, and I don't watch this film anymore now that I've reverted back, but a film like Trick or Treat is an amazing horror film. So it's not on the level of one of those. It's also not so bad like A Darkness Falls that I get enjoyment out of how terrible a film like that is. It's in the middle. It's got some positives, but it's not strong enough to leave a lasting impression. So in that regard, I'm going to give it an indifferent on this one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the review. Please do me a favor, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell so that way you can be notified of future reviews. Let me know what you think. And if you agree, do you disagree? What did I get right? What did I get wrong? Let me know. I will talk to you all next time on Rick Cast Reviews. You stay classy, Internet.